Welcome back to the Journeyman Podcast, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm your host, and we're diving deep into episode 35 today, which is about AI. It's a really fascinating topic, especially when we start talking about the idea of AI singularity and what it means for the future of, well, pretty much everything. Before we go too deep, though, if you like what you hear, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the Journeyman Podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. But let's get into it. You know, when we hear these terms like singularity, it can be tempting to think of it as pure science fiction, but there are actually some very prominent figures taking this idea very, very seriously.
Yeah, you're right. And one of the biggest ones is Elon Musk. He's really been pretty vocal about the potential dangers of AI development, especially when it's not controlled.
Yeah, Elon Musk, I mean, the
Oh,
guy behind Tesla and SpaceX, not just, a tech enthusiast with a wild imagination.
yeah.
He's a brilliant engineer and entrepreneur, really pushing the limits of technology. So when he starts talking about singularity, it's like, all right, maybe we should listen.
Absolutely. And it's fascinating that he doesn't just view it as something inevitable. It's going to happen. Oh, well, he views it as a potential existential threat to humanity, something that could totally change the course of history.
Okay, so break it down for us then. What exactly does Musk mean when he talks about this singularity?
Well, he uses a really powerful analogy to explain it. He compares it to the event horizon of a black hole.
Oh, wow.
That point of no return where gravity is so strong that nothing, not even light, can escape.
Okay, so I see where this is going. So he's saying that once AI reaches a certain level of intelligence, it's like crossing that event horizon. There's no going back, and who knows what's on the other side.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so concerning. We could be talking about creating something that becomes so much more intelligent than us that we totally lose control.
This reminds me of something I read in one of the sources you sent me. It was talking about how current AI systems, things like ChatGPT and Grok, are basically just these controlled little, spets from this massive and potentially uncontrollable AI tank. It's like we're just seeing this tiny fraction of what this AI can actually do.
That's a great point. And the source goes on to say that as AI becomes significantly more intelligent, it might, seek to overcome these limitations. And there have even been tests where humans consistently fail to keep that valve closed, so to speak. So controlling a super intelligent AI might be an impossible task.
Oh, wow. So if we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg, right? What happens when the whole thing starts to melt, so to speak? I mean, Musk even suggests that by the time the singularity hits, humanity might actually need a backup plan like colonizing Mars.
It sounds crazy, right? But it highlights the level of concern here. He believes this singularity is happening way faster than we think.
Okay, so we've got this potentially runaway AI on the horizon, but it's not like everyone's just sitting around worrying about it.
Yeah.
There are people who are actively working on developing this technology, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And one of the major figures in this space is Larry Ellison, the CEO of Oracle. He's got a very specific vision for how to fuel these really advanced AI models. It involves something called Project Stargate.
Project Stargate. Okay, that's intriguing. Tell me more about this.
It's a bit secretive, but essentially Ellison argues that to really make use of these advanced AIs, countries need to unify all their data into a single platform that's accessible.
All their data, you mean like everything?
He means everything. Satellite imagery, infrastructure maps, healthcare data, population data, even genomic data.
Hmm.
He wants to create a complete, digital snapshot of an entire nation that AI models can use to understand and respond to queries about that nation.
That sounds efficient on a technological level, but wow, the privacy and security red flags are huge, right?
Yes.
Imagine the potential for misuse if a powerful AI had access to all that sensitive information.
That's exactly the concern raised by one of the sources you sent. It basically asks, what could possibly go wrong when talking about Ellison's plan? They highlight how sensitive personal data is, especially things like health records and DNA, and they worry about what could happen if that information was centralized and accessible to AI.
Yeah, it's a valid concern.
Hmm.
We're talking about giving someone or something the keys to the kingdom without really knowing their intentions. And while Ellison says all this data is crucial for AI to, understand and respond to queries, it's hard not to feel uneasy about the implications.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword for sure. And it becomes even more complex when we consider how far AI has already come. We're not talking about, simple voice assistants anymore. This is something way more powerful and potentially way more unpredictable.
Right, because asking my smart speaker to play my favorite song is one thing, but talking about an AI that can access and analyze mass amounts of data,
Oh.
potentially my medical records or my genetic information, that's a whole different ballgame.
Absolutely. And that's where things start to get really interesting and potentially very concerning.
Okay, well, we're going to take a quick break here, but when we come back, we'll delve even deeper into the potential dangers of AI and what, if anything, we can actually do about it.
Sounds good. Welcome back to the Journeyman podcast. Before the break, we were talking about, unifying all this data and how that could fuel even more powerful and potentially uncontrollable AI systems.
Yeah, it's definitely a bit unnerving to think about all that sensitive information being centralized and accessible to AI, especially, when you consider that we're still trying to figure out how to control something that could become so much smarter than us.
Exactly. And one of the sources you sent uses this really interesting analogy to highlight this whole challenge. They compare the dangers of AI to the Stay Puffed Marshmallow Man from Ghostbusters.
Okay, the Stay Puffed Marshmallow Man. I remember that guy. He was huge and fluffy. What's the connection to AI?
Well, on the surface, the Stay Puffed Marshmallow Man seems harmless, even silly, right? But underneath that fluffy exterior is a force that can cause a lot of damage. The analogy is pointing out the danger of, being lulled into a false sense of security by how benign AI seems to be right now.
So just because we can ask a chatbot to write us a poem or, solve a simple math problem, that doesn't mean we really understand the power of AI or that we can
Yeah.
control it. It's like thinking you can control a volcano because you built a nice little tourist village at the base.
Exactly. And the source goes on to say that we tend to anthropomorphize AI. We assume it'll somehow inherit our values and ethics, but there's no guarantee of that a superintelligent AI might view humans as obstacles to its goals or even as a threat.
That's a pretty sobering thought. It makes you wonder, what steps can we take to ensure that AI development remains beneficial to humanity? I mean, is it even possible to control something that could outthink us in every way?
It's a question that a lot of really smart people are trying to figure out right now. Some experts think we need to focus on developing AI systems that are aligned with human values. Others argue that we need to establish clear ethical guidelines and regulations for AI development.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, like with any powerful technology, you need safeguards to prevent misuse. But who gets to decide what those safeguards are, and how do you enforce them in a world where AI development is happening so fast?
That's where things get really complicated. It's not just a technological challenge, it's a political and social one, too. We need to have a global conversation about the future of AI involving not just scientists and engineers, but also policymakers, ethicists, and the public.
It sounds like a huge task, but it's incredibly important we're talking about the future of our species.
You're absolutely right, and that's where leadership is crucial. We need
Mhm.
leaders who understand how complex this issue is, who are willing to listen to different perspectives, and who can make tough decisions when we're not even sure what the future holds.
So it's not just about technological innovation. It's
Mhm.
about being responsible with a technology that could completely change our world.
Exactly. And it's not just about preventing the worst case scenarios. It's also about using AI to solve some of the biggest challenges we face. AI could help us address climate change, develop new medical treatments, create a more equitable and sustainable world.
It sounds like we're standing at a crossroads, right? On one hand, we have the potential to create a future where AI improves our lives and helps us achieve amazing things. But on the other hand, we could unleash something that could get out of control and threaten our very existence.
It's a delicate balance, and the decisions we make now will have huge implications for future generations.
Well, before we get too lost in, the existential implications, let's take a step back and recap what we've talked about so far. We've been discussing the potential dangers of AI, this idea of the singularity where AI surpasses human intelligence.
Mhm.
We talked about Elon Musk's concerns about the singularity being like an event horizon, a point of no return, where AI could become so powerful that we lose control.
We also talked about Larry Ellison's vision for unifying all this national data, which, brings up a lot of questions about privacy and security and the possibility of this data being used in ways we didn't intend. And we talked about how important it is to establish ethical guidelines and regulations for AI development to make sure it benefits humanity.
Yeah, we also touched on the need for strong leadership and global cooperation to deal with the challenges posed by AI. And we talked about how important it is to involve the public in these discussions because ultimately the future of AI affects all of us.
Absolutely. This conversation needs to be happening everywhere, from classrooms to boardrooms to government institutions. The more informed and engaged we are as a society, the better prepared we'll be to navigate this, rapidly changing landscape.
It feels like we've only just scratched the surface of this topic, but before we continue, let's take a quick break. We'll be back to explore some potential solutions and strategies for dealing with the future of AI. Welcome back to the Journeyman podcast. We've been talking about all these potential dangers of AI, the singularity, and this idea of unifying huge amounts of data to make these AI systems even more powerful. It's kind of overwhelming, to be honest. So what can we actually do about it?
Yeah, it's a really big question. And as we said, there are no easy answers, but the sources you shared do offer some possible ways forward.
Okay, I'm listening. What can we do to make sure AI develops in a way that helps humanity instead of, hurting it?
Well, one thing that comes up a lot in the sources is the need for good governance, especially at the state level. They actually specifically mention Texas as an example. They say strong leadership is really important to make sure AI projects don't get out of control.
Yeah, I see what they mean. Texas has become this center for technological innovation, and they've been attracting some of the top people in the AI field. It makes sense that they'd want to be leading the way in setting guidelines and regulations.
Right, and it's not about stopping innovation or creating a bunch of unnecessary rules. It's about being responsible with a technology that has the potential to completely change our world.
Because a really important point. It's about finding that balance between encouraging progress and making sure it happens safely and ethically. It's
Mm.
like building a bridge. You need a strong foundation and good supports to make sure it doesn't fall apart.
Exactly. And the sources emphasize that this isn't just a job for governments or tech companies. It's a conversation that needs to involve everybody. We all have a stake in the future of AI, and we need to be informed and engaged in these discussions.
That's so true. It's easy to feel powerless when you're talking about something as complex and fast-moving as AI. But our choices and actions will really shape how this technology develops.
Absolutely. And remember, AI isn't just something of the future. It's already changing our lives in so many ways. From the algorithms that control what we see on social media to the self-driving cars that are starting to appear on the roads, AI is becoming more and more a part of our society.
It makes me think back to that tank and valve analogy we talked about.
Yeah.
It really shows how important it is to understand the power of AI
Yeah.
that's already out there, hidden beneath the surface of our everyday lives.
Yeah, and the sources suggest that as AI gets even more advanced, we're going to face even more ethical dilemmas. Like, how do we make sure AI doesn't make existing social inequalities worse? Or how do we prevent AI from being used for bad things, like developing autonomous weapons?
These are really tough questions,
Mm.
and there are no easy answers. But I think the first step is to admit that there are risks and start having these difficult conversations.
Definitely, we need to approach AI with a sense of wonder, but also with caution. We need to be aware of its limitations and how it could be misused, but also embrace its ability to solve problems and make our lives better.
It's a tricky balance and one that we'll need to figure out carefully in the years to come.
Well said. And I think the most important thing to remember is that the future of AI isn't set in stone. It's something we can shape and influence through our choices and actions.
It's a good reminder that we're not just along for the ride with this technology. We have the power to steer the ship, so to speak.
Exactly. And I believe that if we approach AI responsibly and collaboratively with a commitment to human values, we can use its power for good and create a future that benefits everyone.
Well, that's a hopeful thought to end on. It's been a fascinating and sometimes a little scary journey exploring the potential dangers and promises of AI.
It has. And I think the sources you found have given us a lot to think about.
For sure, if you're interested in learning more about this topic, be sure to check out the link in the description for the source material and for more discussions about the things that matter most. Be sure to subscribe to the Glenn Beck channel.
It's a great way to stay informed and engaged.
Absolutely. And as always, thank you for joining us on the Journeyman Podcast. If you like this episode, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any future deep dives. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning.